A man locked out of a nightclub on New Year's Eve transforms that humiliation into a 7 million copy anthem. A teenager mopping studio floors discovers her voice can command the world's dance floors. A veteran crooner, written off as yesterday's news, reclaims the top of the charts after 20 years of silence. These are not comebacks. These are reckonings. The master's grind documents the moment when years of invisible labor, rejected demos, and empty pockets finally broke open into triumph. What follows is the sound of people who refuse to disappear. Yes, it's over. The chip. 13. Chic's Le Freak, 1978. Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards spent 6 years playing Chitlin circuit clubs for $10 a night, precision funk work that jazz purists dismissed as commercial waste. New Year's Eve 1977 arrived with a specific wound, Studio 54's Velvet Rope. Grace Jones waiting inside, the door closed in their faces. That rejection became a profane chant, a rhythmic hook born from being cast out. Summer 1978, at Power Station Studio A, they gambled everything on a high-tension string arrangement stripped bare and aggressive. Terrified radio would reject what they'd built. 7 million copies sold. The gatekeepers who barred the studio doors now begged for production mandates. Down, pass your head, spin it all around. 46 years later, that track remains Atlantic Records' highest-selling single, a permanent record etched in wax of the night. Rodgers learned his greatest victory tasted like vindication. 12. A Taste of Honey's A Boogie Oogie Oogie, 1978. Janice Marie Johnson and Hazel Payne spent 6 years invisible on USO tours across military bases in Alaska and Asia, treated as reliable background acts rather than creative forces. The duo logged over 200 nights annually in mid-70s club circuits, hauling their own equipment into smoke-filled lounges for union scale while watching the path to a recording contract remain sealed. June 10th, 1978 marked their gamble. A bass-heavy groove Johnson wrote in response to a disinterested military audience, channeling the sting of invisibility into a defiant command to dance. $2 million units sold. The industry crowned them Best New Artist, the first black group to claim that Grammy, displacing traditional rock acts at the highest honor in music. That platinum debut single remains a staple of international DJ sets, a reminder that Johnson refused to let silence break her resolve. 11. Rick James' You and I, 1978. 13 years of creative subservience crushed him. The Minor Birds collapsed in 1966, then a decade uncredited at Motown, faceless in the Gordy machine. James assumed total command with a depleted $20,000 budget, writing, producing, and playing every instrument himself to bypass expensive session players and ensure every note remained untainted by corporate compromise. April 1978 arrived as ultimatum: deliver the punk funk sound exactly as recorded or face permanent blacklisting. A 20-week reign at the R&B Summit and double platinum certification transformed the former in-house songwriter into the king of punk funk, forcing Motown to restructure its entire strategy around his image. That 8-minute disco funk opus remains the definitive template for dance floor endurance, a victory James later cited as the moment he finally erased the sting of mid-60s poverty and professional anonymity. Here's something that hurts. Only 1% of viewers on Music Express FM are subscribed. 99 out of 100 come for the ride, feeling the energy, discovering songs that hit right in the chest, yet you haven't joined us. Why walk away when the engine is running? Subscribing costs absolutely nothing, but it guarantees you'll always catch the next great track before anyone else. This isn't just a playlist, it's a movement. Don't listen from the sidelines. Be the 1% that fuels the music. Hit subscribe and stay on board. 10. Parliament's Flashlight, 1978. George Clinton endured 15 years of commercial obscurity and legal entanglements after his 1950s doo-wop beginnings, battling a $500 per week debt to Motown that stripped him of his own band's name and forced a desperate pivot into psychedelic rock. Parliament survived on a grueling 200-date annual touring circuit throughout the early 70s, hauling massive stage props in cramped vehicles while facing frequent financial insolvency that nearly disbanded the collective. January 1978 at United Sound Systems, Bernie Worrell layered 3 Mini-Moog synthesizers to create the signature squelch bass, a technical gamble born from exhaustion with traditional funk arrangements and urgent need to salvage the Funkadelic sessions. Flashlight secured the #1 R&B spot for 3 consecutive weeks in March, transforming Clinton from cult leader into platinum-selling visionary and forcing industry adoption of the P-Funk aesthetic as dominant sonic currency. That synthesized low end remains the most sampled frequency in West Coast G-Funk, a permanent record of Clinton's refusal to surrender autonomy during the lean years when he traded his clothes for studio time. 9. Funkadelic's One Nation Under a Groove, 1978. George Clinton endured 15 years of commercial obscurity and the collapse of the Parliament's Reviolet Records contract, legally barred from using his own group's name while surviving on $25 per week stipends. The collective logged over 200 dates annually in the early 70s, traveling in a converted Greyhound bus with no heating, huddled around a single space heater to survive winter treks between Detroit and the East Coast. April 18, 1978 at United Sound Systems, Clinton gambled on a 15-minute groove that risked alienating R&B radio. Fueled by emotional friction of proving funk was spiritual liberation rather than just a genre. The single peaked at #1 on the Billboard Soul chart for 6 consecutive weeks, forcing a rigid industry to acknowledge P-Funk mythology as a commercial juggernaut, commanding $100,000 per show production budgets. That track remains the only funk anthem to sell 1 million copies, featuring a live mock audience, a legacy Clinton maintained was the only way to heal the trauma of witnessing the 1967 Detroit riots. Like Chic's Rejection transformed into 7 million copies, Clinton's legal erasure transformed into cultural dominion. 8. Donna Summer's Last Dance, 1978. 8 years of European displacement and the 1971 failure of Sally Go Round the Roses forced Summer into the psychological isolation of a Munich studio, humming demos for $15 per session while suppressing her operatic training to satisfy German pop producers. Summer endured 14-hour days recording musical theater cast albums and backing vocals for Three Dog Night, financing her survival in a foreign country through sheer volume of anonymous labor while living in a cramped apartment near the English Garden. Early 1978 at Westlake Recording Studios, Summer confronted the risk of a ballad to disco transition, channeling her frustration with the film Thank God It's Friday into a vocal performance so demanding it required a 7-minute extended arrangement to capture her refusal to be relegated to background singer. June 1978's ascent to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and subsequent Grammy for Best Female R&B Vocal Performance forced the American industry that ignored her for a decade to crown her Queen of Disco, a title she wielded to gain unprecedented creative autonomy over her next triple platinum project. Last Dance remains the only track in history to win both an Academy Award and a Golden Globe for Best Original Song in the same year, a permanent record of the moment Summer transformed session musician exhaustion into the dominant vocal template for every high-energy pop anthem that followed. 7. Teddy Pendergrass closed the door in 1978. 5 years of secondary billing as drummer for Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes tethered Pendergrass to a contract prioritizing the group's brand over his lead vocals, fueling desperate professional resentment that forced him to walk away from stable touring income to reclaim his own voice. Pendergrass endured a grueling 1977 promotional circuit spanning dozens of secondary markets to establish his solo identity. A physical marathon that transitioned him from the anonymity of the drum kit to the exhausting spotlight of frontmen responsible for carrying the entire financial weight of a touring band. During 1978 tracking sessions at Sigma Sound Studios, Gamble and Huff pivoted to a for women only marketing strategy for the single, a high-stakes gamble forcing Pendergrass to shed his aggressive R&B grit for vulnerable bedroom ballad delivery he initially feared would compromise his masculine image. The record's ascent to number 1 on the Billboard R&B charts for 2 weeks solidified his teddy bear persona, triggering a social phenomenon where midnight concerts for women only became mandatory industry standard to manage overwhelming, near riotous demand from his new female-dominated fan base. I've waited all day long just to... A 56-week run on the Billboard 200 for the parent album, Life is a Song Worth Singing, remains testament to his solo dominance, flavored by memory of his 1975 departure from the Blue Notes over a dispute for top billing that nearly cost him his entire career. Like Evelyn King's ascent from janitor to disco queen, Pendergrass's journey demanded he embrace the very vulnerability his past had taught him to hide. 6. Evelyn Champagne, King's Shame, 1978. King spent 14-hour shifts cleaning Alpha International Studios for $2.50 per hour, enduring the invisibility of a janitor while harboring a secret vocal power that her father, a former singer, had been unable to monetize during his own career. Life discovered the teenagers singing while scrubbing a toilet in a second-floor washroom, a moment of physical labor that transformed into an impromptu audition to escape the generational cycle of menial service. During the 1977 recording session at RCA Studios, the 17-year-old vocalist faced intense pressure to deliver a mature, disco-inflected performance in just a few takes to satisfy skeptical executives who doubted a minor could anchor a dance floor anthem. Shame achieved gold certification within 6 months of release, forcing the industry to crown the former cleaning girl the disco queen, and propelling her from sub-minimum wage laborer to global chart topper with 3 consecutive top 10 hits. The 6.33-minute, 12-inch extended mix remains the definitive club standard for high-tempo soul, a permanent record of the Night King transition from mopping studio floors to dominating the airwaves those same floors supported. 5. Cheryl Lynn's Gotta Be Real, 1978. 4 years of anonymity followed Lynn's 1974 Gong Show appearance, where she initially refused to sign a contract, enduring the social friction of returning to a $135 per week job as a tour guide, while peers mocked her for missing her chance at stardom. Six months of grueling rehearsals at Della Studios saw Lynn battle the physical friction of vocal nodules and exhaustion to transition from gospel-trained theater understudy to precision-based disco vocalist capable of hitting the high E6 note on command. September 1978 marked the David Paich-led session at Studio 55, where Lynn navigated the emotional friction of a make-or-break recording budget, risking her entire reputation on a single take to capture the track's infectious, unpolished joy. A number 1 R&B chart position and RIAA Platinum certification forced the same industry executives who dismissed her theatrical voice to pivot, rebranding her as the definitive architect of the sophisticated disco sound to salvage their own market relevance. The 11-second sustained note in the bridge remains a technical standard for modern vocal competitions. Lynn maintains the victory is defined not by the platinum plaque, but by the memory of the silence in the room when label heads realized they could no longer ignore her power. Like Teddy Pendergrass's vulnerability became his weapon, Lynn's theatrical precision became the industry's new blueprint for disco authenticity. 4. The OJ's Used to Be My Girl, 1978. 15 years of professional recording preceded this crossover apex, a span defined by the group's refusal to abandon their gospel-rooted vocal architecture, despite 1960s industry demand for more sanitized, pop-oriented soul. 1,000 miles of highway separated the group from their Cleveland origins as they migrated to Philadelphia, a desperate relocation fueled by the collapse of Neptune Records, which left the trio scavenging for a stable production home to avoid total career dissolution. April 1978 marked the release of the So Full of Love sessions, where Gamble and Huff gambled on a mid-tempo disco-inflected groove, forcing Eddie Leverett to balance technical precision with the raw, church-inflected grit required to keep the track from becoming a hollow club anthem. 5 million units sold cemented their status as the definitive architects of the Philadelphia sound, transforming the group from regional R&B mainstays into global icons who dictated the sonic terms of the late 70s airwaves, while the industry scrambled to replicate their sophisticated orchestral soul. 70 consecutive weeks on the R&B charts established a durability record that persists as testament to their survival. The victory is flavored by the memory of the 1977 departure of original member William Powell, whose battle with cancer meant he never witnessed the group's ultimate commercial vindication. 3. Bobby Caldwell's What You Won't Do for Love, 1978. 6 years of grueling anonymous session work for TK Records preceded this moment, a period where Caldwell was relegated to background utility player while the label prioritized disco acts, leaving him to suppress his own jazz fusion identity to survive the industry's narrow racial pigeonholing. Two final days were granted by Henry Stone to produce a hit after the initial album lacked a lead single, forcing Caldwell to scramble in the studio under the crushing realization that failure meant immediate termination of his recording career. October 1978 marked the emergency recording session where the signature heart-shaped clear vinyl was conceived as a marketing gimmick. This desperate visual gamble masked the label's fear that white audiences would reject the R&B sound and black audiences would reject the artist's face. What you won't do a number 9 Billboard Hot 100 peak achieved through deliberate faceless marketing campaign forced the industry to reckon with a voice that transcended the color bar, turning a singer who was once a hidden studio hand into a multi-platinum songwriter sought by everyone from Chicago to Neil Diamond. What I would not do. Over 80 distinct hip-hop and R&B samples, including the foundation of Tupac's Do for Love, ensure the track's permanence in the modern sonic landscape, validating Caldwell's refusal to abandon his soulful phrasing despite the initial white bread typecasting that nearly erased him. 2. Johnny Mathis and Deniece Williams's Too Much, Too Little, Too Late, 1978. Mathis endured a 10-year drought without a top 10 hit prior to 1978, a decade defined by the social friction of Columbia Records, forcing him into uncomfortable, over-orchestrated, easy-listening covers that alienated his jazz sensibilities and relegated him to the has-been circuit. Williams spent years as a $50 per session backup singer for Stevie Wonder's Wonder Love, enduring the physical friction of grueling 1970s tour schedules and the exhaustion of the Chitlin circuit while struggling to secure a solo identity outside of a superstar's shadow. On January 25, 1978, producer Jack Gold gambled on a session at A&M Studios to pair the fading veteran with the rising soul singer, a move born from the emotional friction of Mathis's fear that his career had reached a permanent, stagnant ceiling. Yes, it's over. The chips are down. The single reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 on June 3, 1978, forcing an industry that had dismissed Mathis as a relic of the 1950s to scramble for his signature, resulting in his first platinum certification in the modern R&B era. That record remains the only duet in history to return a 1950s pop icon to the top of the charts after a 20-year gap, a metric of longevity that validated Mathis's refusal to retire, despite the crooner label that nearly erased his relevance.